So, good evening, everybody. Saludos. Half a day, Yantiro, Talofa. I am so happy to be here today with these amazing women to have this panel about the opportunities and challenges of philanthropy in the territories of the U.S. As you see, I am wearing my Pacific style flower because I spent 3.5 weeks in the Pacific getting to know wonderful people and cultures. And some of these wonderful people are here today with us. And I just wanted to have that commemoration of how wonderful it was to be there and spend time with you. So today we want to talk to these professionals that have dealt in the philanthropic sector in each of the U.S. territories. And we have with us a very great group, starting with Deanna James, President and CEO of the St. Croix Foundation for Community Development. We have Andra Samoa, community leader, activist from American Samoa. We have Glenice Pagan, Executive Director of Philanthropy, Puerto Rico. We have Emma Perez, Operation Manager of Mariana Alliance of NGOs, Center of CNMI. And we have two people from Guam. We have Anita Borja Enriquez, President of the University of Guam. And we have Sarah Thomas Nenadog, Vice Chair of Payuta Inc. And I just want to let them go ahead and introduce themselves and talk a little bit more about who they are before we get on into the questions. Just a logistic, there is a question and answer box, so please make sure to use that so we can discuss those questions later in the conversation. So let's go ahead. Who wants to go first to introduce themselves? I'm gonna roll call. Deanna.
Hello, my name is Deanna James. I am the president and CEO of St. Croix Foundation. We actually celebrated our 33rd anniversary on Sunday. So we've been around quite a bit. We are, I think, very much like some of the organizations that are represented here tonight, in that we look very different from traditional philanthropy on the mainland, and that number one, we serve as the preeminent fiscal sponsor for the Virgin Islands. And we have served in that capacity for over 250 local nonprofit organizations. We do a lot of things. We are both operating foundation and community foundation. So we do grant making and direct services, but I'm pleased to be here. I am a staunch advocate for place-based philanthropy and really an advocate for all of the territories in the work that I do with national philanthropy. So thank you for having us here tonight.
Thank you for being here. Let's go down to the Pacific. Let's see, Anita, please introduce yourself.
Hafa buenas and manana sechus. Good morning and blessings to all of you. Guahusi Anita Borja Enriquez. Sumasagazu in Guahan or Guam, Familian Ngoku, Goro, Andats, and Papa, and Tsotsu getting Unibets at Guahan. I come from the families of the Ngokus, the Borjas, the Titanos, the Cruz, all from Sumai. I work at the University of Guam, and I am very happy to be here. The University of Guam does have a University of Guam Endowment Foundation, which serves as the advancement / fundraising endowed arm as a separate 501c3, and my involvement in philanthropy is just based on experiences, past years. I was part of the founding member of the Guam Museum Foundation Board of Directors, a founder of the Guam Women's Chamber of Commerce, which also engages in raising funds for social community projects as well as scholarships for higher education institutions. I've also been engaged in a joint study with Holly Rustick, who is a well-known author and trainer on grants, management, administration, and we have yet to formally published our findings on an analysis of nonprofit funding in a small island economy, challenges and opportunities on Guam. And so our study is a bit dated, but nonetheless, what we have concluded, among other things, is that how very important NGOs, the nonprofit organizations, play a role in contributing to the gross domestic product of any economy. And so that, of course, is going to prompt a separate study in itself. But I think it's very important to recognize just the cultural nuances, the differences in terms of what makes up a successful model for a revenue portfolio for any kind of nonprofit organization in the philanthropy zone, and how as a small service-based economy and one that's rooted on just island cultural values and separate types of institutional values, how the nature of giving our portfolio really differs from that of a U.S. model of philanthropy and giving. Happy to be here. Thank you.
It's an honor to have you, Anita, and we will be talking a lot more about all that. Andra Samoa from another part of the Pacific.
Talofa and half a day and buenos dias.
Buenas tardes.
Yeah, buenos tardes.
Buenos dias over there, because over there is like, what time is
It's
it?
still
over there?
morning,
Oh,
almost noon, so it's 11:14 a.m.
Great.
I'm Andra, and my last name is Samoa. I sometimes feel cursed that I have a last name that I always think of so many others to put first in my life before myself. So I've been educated in the United States, worked on Capitol Hill for 11 years, and returned back to make a difference in the community. And as unincorporated and unorganized of the US territories, we are very dependent for the grants. And with regards to the topic we are discussing today, there is a critical need. I've been always using my own money to promote a lot of the empowerment programs for women and the youth, but just have not had time. I served in the legislature of American Samoa as the only woman for 4 years as a representative. So Adi just elevated me to be a senator, but on our Senate side, we have to be selected, not elected. So that's the communal side of our culture, to be selected traditionally with your highest ranking chiefs. So the House side, there is 21 of us, and all the representatives are mostly men, and just one woman, and all the men are chiefs. So I am not a chief, and most of the villages, there's 76 villages that make up American Samoa. Most of the villages do not allow a woman to be a chief. But nevertheless, in policy making and serving the community, the women are the forefront of implementation. So despite the grief that they encounter from the patriarch of power and control, we nevertheless are the drivers of change. But it's so good for me to join. And as I see, we're all women, So this is a very empowered group. So glad to be with all of you. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much, Andra. And it's so fascinating to have you here with us in recognizing the experience you have with community and the dedication that you have given to it. Also, I've discovered women are driving the change in the territories, I have to say, because I've seen it. I can give testimony to it. So thank you so much. So back to the Marianas. Let's have Emma introduce yourself.
Afade Santiro. My name is Emma Perez. My grandfather was Juan Diaz Perez from Guam, and my grandmother was Remedios Leon Guerrero from Guam as well. I'm half Chamorro and half Swedish. So that's why I look like this. So Mango, Marianas Alliance of NGOs, was founded here in the CNMI over 10 years ago. And the function of it primarily was trainings that happened maybe once or twice a year, depending on funding that came in. But we had a dream. I joined the board maybe 6 or 7 years ago, and we had a dream to make it alive, that it could become the administrative arm of nonprofits so that nonprofits could focus on their mission. Because traditional healers, beekeepers, boat builders, traditional navigators, they don't necessarily have the administrative skill to do what it takes to manage funds, to manage federal funds, to do payroll and do all the, do W-2s and file quarterly taxes. And so we wrote, there was a team of our board that were the core of the thinking, and we wrote an ANA grant called the Lemai May Project, the Lemai May Incubator Project. Lemai meaning breadfruit in Chamorro, and May meaning breadfruit in Carolinian. So we wanted to give food. That was an incubator. I love it. So we got a 3-year ANA grant, and it was just under $1 million, and we're finishing up our 3rd year this month, actually, in a few days. And what we did was start training nonprofits so that they could be sustainable. We did a survey, and what everybody said was that they needed funding and they needed financial assistance on how to take care of those funds. So that's where we've been focusing on, and I am just delighted with how far we've come. We have almost 100 organizational members, almost 100 individual members, and there were 6 ANA grant applications submitted from the CNMI this last round, which was unheard of. And 3 of them are currently in negotiations, which is the final phase that may lead to actual awards. And that's because we kind of helped them. So anyway, we have a staff of 8 now. And what I bring to the table is 40 years of nonprofit finance experience. And I am mentoring as fast as I can. We do case studies, and I look forward to sharing with you later when we get to the data section, a rap I wrote. That's kind of it. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Emma, for being here with us. It was great to meet you all in my trip to CNMI. And last but not least, a lovely person, human being that I've grown to love, from Guam, from also Marianas, because he's in the Marianas Islands. Sarah, please introduce yourself. You're on mute. You have to unmute yourself. You have to unmute, Sarah, because we're not able to listen.
Correct.
There you go.
Buenas Danhofa Day. Thank you very much, Addie, for including me in this wonderful group of awesome women. I greet you all today, and I just thank you for all of the good work. I can already feel the love and feel all the many things that you have done to help build our various communities. So, nonprofit work, I always say, isn't for everyone. And so I can just see from the people that are here that you, or should I say, nonprofit work has chosen you. And I just wanted to share a little bit that I've been in the field for some 40 plus years. And most of my work has been managing nonprofit organizations. Also, I have spent a lot of the time that in my uh, life's work doing a lot of training and writing grants and helping people build capacity in their various organizations and communities. So I've worked not only here on Guam, but around the Pacific, including in the greater Pacific in Fiji and in other Pacific islands, and served as chair of our Pacific Islands Association of Non-Governmental Organizations, PIANGO, that brings together all the different NGOs from the Pacific. So we stay connected with them, and that's really a great part of what I've done in the last decade or so, and that's help to make connections with nonprofits, with other nonprofits and other communities, as well as with the business and governmental sectors, which is part, as many of you know, in Agenda 2030 in the United Nations, is that they want to see that the three entities, business, nonprofits, and business, nonprofit, and governments work closely together so that they can help work towards sustaining their various community goals. So I'm glad to be here, and I look forward to today and share the experiences that I've had in philanthropy. And as we all know, in the work that we do with nonprofits, we definitely have to do something that is sometimes very difficult for us, and that's ask for money, right? So I think today will be a good day to talk about how we can explore different ways we can do that in our various islands and integrating our um, cultural nuances, in this whole path of philanthropy. Thank you, Addie, for having me.
Thank you. And now, of course, how can I forget my dear friend, Glenys from Puerto Rico. Please introduce yourself.
Yes, hi, thank you. And don't worry, I was listening and I'm like, oh my God, in awe. So nice to meet everybody and hello, all the attendees. I'm Glenys Pagan, Executive Director of Philanthropy Puerto Rico. In English, that would be Philanthropy Puerto Rico. And Philanthropy Puerto Rico really began as an organization that came together with most of the local funders in Puerto Rico from the foundations, the local foundations, they decided to get together and be like, hey, we need to learn from each other. We need to see how we can really collaborate and work together and align each other. And so, it was kind of sad, but nothing much happened. But then as, some things came along, like bankruptcy and then the fiscal board and then the hurricanes and then the earthquakes and more hurricanes and just a little bit of different things and COVID and the whole thing, then it was kind of understood and seen the value of an organization like Philanthropy Puerto Rico, which is kind of a philanthropy support organization and an intermediary organization. So we really try to bring together philanthropy, allow them to align and leverage each other in their giving. And we also help serve as an intermediary to keep funders or attract funders to Puerto Rico and attract funders with an agenda of equity and justice and commitment. And we do that by having a fund. It's called the Forward Puerto Rico Fund. We manage that, and we manage different projects that we partner with funders so they can actually do some work in Puerto Rico, and that brings different challenges that I'm sure we'll talk about. But happy to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Glenisa. She's an amazing yogi. I just wanted to go right through the questions, because we're quite a few of us here, and also to point out that the people here, as you have seen, have come from different type of philanthropic experiences. So we're not trying to compare. We're not trying to build upon each other in the sense of like if it was a competition. We are just trying to exchange notes about what are the state of philanthropy in each of your territories and the challenge that you face. So I'm going to start with the first question, which is, describe your experience with philanthropy in your territory a little bit more. How does it happen in your territory? How does it operate? Because it's so different for each territory, that we would like to know more about how is the operation of philanthropy in each of the territories. Let's start with the last one, Glenise.
Sure, and I think I kind of enjoy this, just like you were saying, Ari, not to compare, but I think it's a learning, and we're probably all in different phases of kind of a journey. But let me give you a little bit of context of philanthropy in Puerto Rico. So there is local philanthropy, which it's very small. And when I say small, I mean, again, it's compared to other places, it might be small. Compared to other places, it might be big. But maybe in grant giving, that would be like $5 million a year for all organizations, and a population of 3.5 million people. And then, like you heard, this fiscal crisis and hurricanes and everything, they kind of put us on the map of disaster philanthropy. So a lot of philanthropy came into Puerto Rico, and they were very interested in supporting the crisis. So we did have a lot of influx at that moment of philanthropy, mainly U.S. philanthropy, a little bit of international, but mainly U.S. philanthropy. And then after that, and probably now it's been 5 years after that, you can see that it's dissipating. And we've done, organizations like Philanthropy Puerto Rico has been trying to do have philanthropy to stay engaged in Puerto Rico. But they definitely changed the philanthropic sector in terms of the practices that, the traditional, how philanthropy worked in Puerto Rico. And then you have this big influx, and an influx of language and different ways of giving, and size of grants and everything. So really the philanthropic scenario kind of changed after that, and it's going to be interesting the next couple of years how it is. It was very I'd say initially it was very project based, like small projects, nothing too big or nothing that several philanthropic entities would work to do, like real big changes. But that has changed, and that has changed with the influx that we had. It has not been philanthropy also that has worked so closely with government. Yes, there is a work with government, but not this, like they call it blended capital for big projects. It's taught, but there's really haven't been projects like that. And I say that because in comparison, when philanthropy from the US comes, they come very close to government. And sometimes those plans are like, oh, I'm gonna give this amount of money and then you put this amount of money and you work together. That had not been a culture that was done here. It was much more with the different projects. And again, it has changed because there was a big disruption in the way the sector worked.
Definitely interesting to see how it pans out in the next years, right? Because of this peak that we had in Puerto Rico. And I think it happened in the Caribbean because Irma Maria also affected our very close islands of Virgin Islands. Diana, can you speak a little bit about how philanthropy is working over there?
So we had a very different experience in Puerto Rico, despite the fact that we are affected oftentimes by the same disasters. So when we were founded, we were actually founded in disaster on the heels of Hurricane Hugo in 1990. So it was we were founded a year after the hurricane. And one of the challenges with that hurricane, as with Maria, is that after it hit the Virgin Islands, when, at a time when philanthropic resources oftentimes pour in to communities like ours, it hit South Carolina just 10 days later. And so all of the focus and all the resources went there. The same thing happened with Maria. We got hit first, and then all the focus went to Puerto Rico. So we actually got almost zero resources after Hurricane Maria. We got very little after Hurricane Hugo, and it was part of the rationale for how we were formatted, and our founders' approach to philanthropy had to be different because we didn't have seed funding coming in like most philanthropic organizations that start from the ground up. And so everything about how we look as an organization, how we serve, was informed by the lack of philanthropic investment in the U.S. Virgin Islands. I also have to acknowledge that I am the first Virgin Islander, native Virgin Islander woman, person of color to lead a philanthropic institution in the Virgin Islands. We have 3 foundations. And I have been at the helm for 8 years. My predecessor was a white man from Maine, who served at the helm of the organization for 22 years. And I can tell you that was yet another, challenging transition for me, because despite the fact that we didn't have a very sort of deep pool of philanthropic resources and donor resources in the Virgin Islands, most of the donors that we did have left when he left the organization. And so a lot of the work that I've had to do is around building new relationships nationally. We have probably the largest network of national partners than we've ever had. Organizations like the Association of Black Foundation Executives, who sort of have really invested in the Virgin Islands, invested in my professional development, to support us and to support the nonprofits that we serve, to connect them with other national funders. So we raise money differently, obviously, because of that, and we are very unconventional in our format. We do not have an endowment. We've actually made the decision not to build an endowment because endowment, that formula for developing philanthropy is not one that we find to be an equitable option for us in the small community that we exist in. In addition, because we serve so close to nonprofits, we actually think building an endowment would put us at greater distance from the organizations and the relationships we try to cultivate with those organizations. And so we have worked really hard to build, in addition to the network of organizations that we serve as a fiscal sponsor for. Under my tenure, we developed a consortium of nonprofits where we brought organizations together, those that serve as that sit underneath our fiscal sponsor umbrella, and independent 501c3s, to come together to start working on building a real meaningful and intentional culture of collaboration. And so organizations can work together to actually try to leverage the scarce resources they have, and to also work together to secure funding together as coalitions. And so we have worked really hard to provide the kind of, facilitating of relationships that have allowed a lot of our nonprofits to identify and secure funding, and continue to be a really rabid advocate for deeper nonprofit investments in the Virgin Islands. We also have been working to sort of challenge the field of philanthropy to think differently about how it supports. I sit in a lot of spaces that talk about equity, and I know you said, Adi, that we need to have a conversation about, like, all of us being in the same boat, but the reality in an equity equation, the fact that we are so small presents yet another challenge when funders are comparing us to Puerto Rico, that is larger, that they feel like a deeper investment will have bigger impact than making an investment in a community that only has 100,000 people in it. And so that continues to be our advocacy, in addition to being the only predominantly Black colony, and having to contend with a lot of the racial dynamics that are at play in American philanthropy and in America in general. We have a lot of work to do to advocate for a real equity formula for philanthropy in terms of how they direct resources. I can tell you a story. We're working with a partner in Puerto Rico to appeal to a large number of national foundations to open up the spigot for the territories, for the U.S. territories. We were obviously really focused on the Caribbean, and within several months of us sending out this appeal, I got an email, sort of an invitation to apply, RFP, invitation to apply for a grant from a very large foundation. And it only had Puerto Rico as an eligible territory. None of the other territories were included. And as I was looking at the email that was sent out, I kept looking at it, and I'm like, that picture that they have, it was about arts education, looked very familiar. And I'm like, is that a picture of St. Croix? They'd used a picture of our carnival on the island of St. Croix to send out this notification for receiving applications, and immediately wrote to them and was like, you've got to fix this. And they fixed it. Not only did we advocate for us to be included, but we advocated for all the territories, for Guam and Northern Mariana to be included as well, because we are both, all of us are smaller organizations. And so it was one of the few national funders that actually included all of the territories. And we continue to advocate on behalf of all of you that sit in the Pacific, because national philanthropy, in addition to having a blind spot for us because of our size, so they say, they have a blind spot obviously for the Pacific. So that's a lot of the work that I do right now, is advocating for real equity and for all of the territories to be included in funding opportunities.
Thank you so much, Diana, for bringing this up. These are conversations that have to be had. And like I said, Diana, the first time we spoke, for me, it has been very a growth opportunity to be able to recognize as a Puerto Rican how much space we occupy in the territories talks. We as Puerto Ricans think that we are very small. It's part of a symptom of colonialism, is how do we feel small, right? And insignificant and incapable. So having these conversations with other territories and giving the space and advocating for equity, real equity, is very important for us in the right to democracy. And that's why I want to go to the smallest one, territory, in size, but not in spirit and people, the big people of American Samoa. Andra, you are a territory that it's one of the most unique. Can you speak a little bit about how is philanthropy operating in American Samoa for the public?
Yes, thank you. Just to be honest, there is a non-existence, as far as I know, of philanthropy here in American Samoa. The extent of philanthropy is myself using my own money since I've become the representative for 4 years. I put out my own allowance of 30,000. So that's 4 years, that's 120,000, a very small scale to make a difference in the village, to build up the local capacity of women and the youth to be able to help me with my projects of recycling and coral reef nursery and the wetland protection and also the rainforest. But we really need, and there must be a reason why. Well, I know the reason with regards to the lack of access of information, and also with the trust issue. Here in American Samoa, we are having problems with accountability and transparency with regards to properly following the competitiveness in the procurement system. So I have led 501c3s, but it has become idle because of my busy schedule. Since I've been defeated from the legislature this past election year, last year, I've now set up my own company as a consultant because there's just so much to be done away from government. With regards to depending on government and working with government, there is no accountability concept with regards to being accountable with federal funds. I used to work at the utility company and was a chief executive officer for about 6 years. And that is what most of FEMA and other agencies, RUS, USDA, that EPA, that have put us almost on high risk. As we currently talk today, I know that there's 5 of the governors that are in Washington, D.C. With regards to the President Biden in terms of discussing U.S. territory issues. But here in American Samoa, I do not know of any consistent or any funding from philanthropy. I do know that we do seek out the A&A grants from government, but as far as a private donor, we don't have private donors on a consistent basis. So that is from my side here in American Samoa.
Thank you, Andra, for sharing that experience. And let's go to the Marianas. I don't know, Anita, can you speak to Guam, and Sarah? Can you speak as to how philanthropy is working in Guam? I don't know who wants to go first from you two.
I will have Miss Sarah. Uh, she's been in the philanthropy lane for decades, so I will defer to her to kick us off.
Thank you. You have to unmute yourself, Sarah. Cannot hear you. Okay. Technical issues. There you go. That's
Okay,
it.
thank you very much. As I reflected on what we've done here on Guam in terms of philanthropy, just like I think many of the territories, philanthropy is not maybe as organized and as well known and embraced as it might be in the United States or in other major countries. But definitely there is giving. There's giving by individuals and there's giving by corporations. And I would say, having been in the field of nonprofits for many years, that we have a very loving and generous community. And I think that culturally we are very likely to give when we know there's a need. And when you ask people, it's very difficult for people here to say no. And generally, the giving comes from when someone is in crisis, when someone is in need, when it can be articulated that, you know, there's really someone or some need that needs to be dealt with or confronted and supported by different individuals. So culturally, I think we're really we're aligned with the giving and cooperation spirit. That's who we are, and I suspect that in many of our islands as well. So I think that in terms of giving, we're very good at that, and it's part of who we are. But in terms of organized giving, there is other than, I would say, major fundraisers that people go to all the time. Um, Corporate giving and giving by individuals and businesses or other organizations on a regular basis. In other words, committing to saying, I'm going to do $50,000 in the next 3 years or whatever the amount is. That's really I think unheard of. That's not the norm here. I think that the organization of philanthropy, there's much that we can do. I'm already listening to some of the different ways in which folks do that. And I think that we can learn from each other on how we can best do that, because I think that we have the potential to do that, and there is corporate giving, but it's not, I think, structured in the way that we can, as nonprofits, we can project that we will have support from these businesses or these individuals for the next 3 years. And I think that's something that's missing, because other than grants, most nonprofits are fueled by federal grants. There are local contracts, and those are not as much as I think nonprofits would like. And I think those two sources of contracts and federal grants are the major source of funding. And so, as Emma was saying, nonprofits are so busy with their mission that they're not always able to do capacity building, to do fund development, to organize. And the other part of that is helping to support boards in their governance and leadership responsibilities. And the main one of the main reasons for boards to exist is to ensure the sustainability of their nonprofit, which, you know, many think, okay, if I do one annual fundraiser, I would have carried out that role. Well, I think there's much more to that. And it's also trying to instill in nonprofits and boards and leadership and in our community that we have to look long term. We can't just say, okay, we got a need today, we're going to fundraise for that, and then that's it. We need to really build a community and build organizations of individuals and people who are vested in our community and will contribute towards building the whole concept of philanthropy. I hope I've answered your
Yes, thank
query
you.
there, Addie.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely. And I wanted Anita to give her a chance to add something about
Sure.
how philanthropy is working in from your perspective.
Thank you. Holly Rustic and I engaged in the study 2019, 2020, and thank you, Sarah, for pointing out some of the realities that were unfolded or reviewed in this particular study. When we look at the basket of the types of revenues that come in, we know that as of 2019, we had about 1,300 registered NGOs or nonprofits on Guam. And so we actually put out a confidential survey. We sent it out to over 700 of these, to which we had actual mailing addresses, and 37 actually responded. We followed up that particular survey with just focus group interviews. And so what I love about what was shared by Emma from Mango is you are providing a service which was really one of the recommendations or the outcomes from this. There are very, very few individuals with the heart and the drive and the commitment and the experience to actually oversee a nonprofit organization. We see executive directors rotating across different nonprofit organizations. Like, oh, you're here now, you're here then. And I've been told, oh, there's no one qualified to run this, no one on Guam who has the qualifications. And this is coming from a Western construct. No one on Guam has the qualifications to actually run an NGO or a nonprofit organization. I said, well, I beg to differ. And it really it boils down to resources. So in looking at the basket of the types of revenues or resources that come in, especially on an island, when we compare it to a survey report from the National Center for Charitable Statistics, nonprofit sector in brief, right? So you had the majority of funds that come from services and products for the private sector, service, which is about 50%, 23% for services and products for government, 12.9% coming from private contributions, 9.2% from government contracts, and 3.6% coming from investment income. And how that differs from what we were able to glean from the responses of these 37 organizations is that the bulk of resources came from private contributions. So these were individual donors and corporations, followed by 19% from government contracts, 15% from services and products for private organizations, and 9% from for services and products for government, and 6% representing other. And so the types of organizations who participated in the survey came from all different sectors: agricultural, island sustainability, education, even some from junior achievement, Rotary clubs, anyone who contributes, chambers of commerce. And that was a very interesting result. That we also learned of those who participated in the survey, the size of their budgets. A majority of those had budgets ranging from 0 to 500,000. Approximately 27% had an annual budget less than 50,000 per year. Approximately 35% had an annual budget ranging from 50,000 to $200,000 per year, and approximately 24.4% had an annual budget ranging from between $200,000 to $500,000. And less than 3% had an annual budget of more than 1.15 million per year. So those could be cancer-related types of support organizations, or perhaps education institutions that have an endowment foundation. And usually those who have endowment foundations, they usually have the support from a financial investment management firm in order to grow those endowed funds for long-term purposes, whether they be for capital, facilities, projects, and so forth. So there were a lot of other, discoveries that were made, and we really wanted to get a sense of the challenges, the opportunities, and so forth. So I'm very happy to just share that. But Sarah's correct. The island cultural values of giving, or puksai, as another way in which we want to nurture, we want to adopt, especially those who are, we call it in Samora, we call it natmatsi, those who are less fortunate, those who are in great need, financial need, or what other types of livelihood related resource needs. And so there's this tendency, or if someone's sick, or a coworker, a child has been diagnosed with cancer, it's not unusual for someone to say, let me donate $500, let me donate $2,000 there. So these are the individual types of donations, but don't necessarily get captured through a nonprofit organization. It's just because of the connections and this wanting to take care of. And that's a culture that we have here. So I don't see that as something that mirrors what we would see in the U.S. mainland, just in general, but it really draws from just this whole reciprocity, as well as this culture of giving.
I have to say that and when we go back to American Samoa, not now, but I saw that culture of giving. It's the way that villages run in American Samoa. It's like the indigenous people from the Pacific, is the culture of giving and community. That community will sustain each other is so strong. It's so strong. So thank you for bringing that up, Sarah, and for the numbers, Anita. And we'll go back to you, Andrea. But now let's give a chance to Emma from CNMI to tell us about philanthropy there.
Thank you. I love the conversation. I love the numbers. I love the rabbit advocate. I love that phrase. I love talking about the board. You guys are like, yeah, we're Biba Famalawan. That's women. So I have had the honor to work with some of the best development directors in California who have systematic, strategic ways of raising money. And so I've learned a lot from them, mostly in my role as building a budget, because I'm the finance person. So I know that there's contributions and there's grants, and they're different. And the contributions, as you're building your budget, there's usually individual, corporate, foundation, and special events. Those are the line items. So that's how my brain works. And then in grants, it's could be from foundation, local, state, grant, federal. What I see here in the CNMI, and we've got between 50 and 60,000 people, and we're one of the poorest places. And I'm sure you guys, if I don't know who is the poorest, but we're all in the poor lane, right? So individual giving, not so much. It's like, it's not worth the time to strategically go after individual donations. If you use that same time to go after a federal grant, you're going to get more bang for your buck. But I think that we have our people in the mainland, the diaspora. And so we need to come up with ways to reach out to them that touch them, because many of them are homesick. Especially, I'm seeing now a lot of like in the 30-year-old range where people are coming back to visit. Some are even moving back. But I think that right now, like the comment about whoever said that there's nobody that can be to lead a NGO. There's not enough training. That's all. I mean, if somebody, because we're all pulled to this work, and if we have some basic tools of understanding, okay, these are the line items, let's prioritize them, let's come up with some basic steps, and then just go do that work. That understanding is not that hard if somebody is given that. You know, here's what you need to do. Because I think a lot of us do, oh, let's do this now, let's do this now, let's do this now, let's have a special event, let's do this, instead of systematically looking at it. And I think that that's one of the things that at Mango we're trying to build is these systems to share with our nonprofits so that if they have enough capacity, they can take it on, or we can do it for them. So that was, and I love the comment about project-based. That's how we run. We get a grant for a project, and that's what we do. And what I'm trying to get the organizations to do is do your operating budget first, starting with your expenses, see what you need, then look at the revenue, realize that your expenses, it'll never work, you know, that there's a process to prepare your organization to move forward. And I also know that, I don't know in your world, but in my world, whatever I'm going to do that day, whatever I've planned to do that day is not going to happen. You know, something else happens and you have to do it. So it's hard. I think all of us are struggling with the Western way, the Western construct, the 40 hours a week, the rules, and the local customs, you know, the local way of being. And I just want to, that's kind of philanthropy. We don't get a lot of individuals. We get some corporate, but it's very, very small. The biggest bang for our bucks is federal funds, and we're going after that. But we need to do the other things. But I want to share something, just a quick story about locals. And I think we possibly all share this, that locals are lazy, that locals aren't skilled, that locals, you know. So I've been here in Saipan for 10 years. I went, my first typhoon was Super Typhoon Sudalor. I had no power in my house for 69 days. No power, no water. But what I remember is, and on either side of me, my neighbors have no power. The second day after, or the next day, I hear this, thack, 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 thack. Now, what is that? Thack, 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 thack. And I get up and I go and I look outside, and my neighbors, all the women in the household, had bandanas on and machetes, and they cleared their whole area and some of mine. And then the next day, they were back to normal. So they're not lazy, they're not unskilled. It's just the Western Industrial Revolution way of thinking about work is different than the island model, which is you work when you need to. You know, you feed your family. And so everything we're doing, we're struggling with those two worlds. And that's something I think we all share. And I struggle with that every single day. Something, you know, the master navigator doesn't want to punch a time clock. You know, there's just things that we have to adapt to and recognize that the Western way isn't necessarily the way, but they've got a lot of good tools that we can borrow from them. And I just wanted to kind of share that story because it was like an eye opener to me.
That is a great story, and I think every one of us felt identified with every word, especially for us in Puerto Rico. We had people. I was without electricity like for 4 months, and people were without electricity for like a year, more than a year. My parents were for 11 months, and just the idea when they start saying that people are lazy, just the idea, it's just so ridiculous, right? And we came with this slogan, the community saves itself. I remember that very well, and we still say it, the community saves itself. So in that sense, I'm going to combine two questions because time is running. So I just wanted to combine two questions and then open to the public. Because we are in right to democracy, know for a fact that there is private foundations and big philanthropists that are very interested in trying to help solve issues, social issues that affect minorities or racial groups or communities in the United States. And what would you say to them? Each of you have lessons learned. You already mentioned challenges, but you already have some very important lessons learned about how can philanthropy, private philanthropy, actually make a difference that would help effective change in the territories. So it's kind of combining two of the questions that I had for you, but I just wanted you to talk about those lessons learned. And I'm going to start with you, Glenise, because I just felt it happens in the small territory, but it happens. It's funny that we can say in this call, the big territory, Puerto Rico, right? It happens the same. What have been the lessons learned, and how can private philanthropy actually be effective to step forward social change, especially systemic change?
Yeah, structural inequities it's something that's interesting because and this is what I say to philanthropy very humbly and honestly, right? But if you are gonna commit, do a generational commitment to come and invest, right? Don't just appear when there's a crisis or somebody kind of told you, oh, go and support this area. But truly, if you say that you, as a philanthropy, as a big philanthropy, work for inequities and justice, social justice and racial equity, and that's all that you say, then truly make that your intention. And for that, you need to do some reflections on how it is that you do that. And that would be a generational commitment. That would be really recognizing if you have an agenda when you come into a place and talking about democracy, sometimes you need to check how you affect that those practices of democracy as well. For us in Puerto Rico, we have this relationship with the US that they on occasion may have some interest, in Puerto Rico having some influence with the diaspora in their elections, or we kind of want to help because you may become a state, but if you do become a state, it has to be for this party. So I just say that because, there might be some agendas that are in play. And if you are truly saying that you're a foundation that works for equity and justice, then there needs to be a reflection on how it is that you execute on that, right? And those are kind of our biggest lessons from Puerto Rico, and recognizing that, we might all be in different journeys, but for us, I think one of the biggest things is that if the locals need to join and kind of set the direction, like if you're coming, yeah, great that you're having, this is the way that you are gonna work in Puerto Rico, or that we truly want you to work if you do want to be equitable and just in your work. And that requires, a vision and an agency, and also, a plan to give out, to guide them in a certain way. That's what we've been definitely working on that. And it's complicated because relationships and everything, but we're on that way.
Thank you so much. I mean, I don't want to keep roll calling. If somebody wants to jump in and share what the lessons learned and what they would say to philanthropy, so it flows more naturally. Who wants to go next?
Okay.
Yes, Diana.
So I want to just say, Emma, I want to sort of acknowledge and lift up the power of nomenclature, of naming things. And so we use the word philanthropy, but it's not our language. It's not really any indigenous community's language. But it is real and it is rich in the communities that we serve. So I want to just honor that. But one of the things that I've been working on, in addition to the advocacy that we do for nonprofits, I believe deeply in the power of place-based philanthropy. And place-based philanthropy is very different than institutional philanthropy or even just community foundations. And one of the things that we've been working on in partnership with some of the other place-based foundations, we've started finding our tribal partners in the rural South in particular, is we've developed a survey. So this conversation tonight is divinely ordered because we want to identify organizations that we invite to fill out this survey. It is not for nonprofits. It is for organizations that have deep, intentional relationships with nonprofits, and focusing on all of the most marginalized places in America. So Native American communities, Alaska, Hawaii, the deep rural South, the Pacific. And so, and we're calling it Mapping the Margins. And it's really founded on one of the guidances that we got from one of our national partners, who basically said on their first trip as a Black American CEO at a foundation in the South, who, when she got to St. Croix, acknowledged that her story of philanthropy, her story of the community that she served was incomplete because it did not include us. It had never included us. And when she got to the Virgin Islands, recognized that she had an incomplete story of her community that she was serving because it did not include the diaspora. And she said to us, be very, very intentional as you reach out to national philanthropy to not focus on your need, but focus on your worth. And I remember that was just one of those things that really transformed us and how we think about the story that we tell of ourselves. And so the survey that we've created is not really just about what is your, what's your operating budget, but really what is the value that you bring to community that philanthropy has not recognized and has not invested in. And so we want to take the results of that story to make a case to national philanthropy that if you want to do deeper work in the States, you've got to look to the margins, because the work that we're doing without the resources are the lessons that they have to learn to actually ensure sustained impact in the communities. With the level of ingenuity and self-sufficiency that exists in these places is of value to the larger field of philanthropy. And we want to help all of us make that case that by first of all, building place-based philanthropy, so building organizations like mine, like Mango, that are providing umbrella support to other nonprofits that are on the front lines, that are doing the real heavy lifting, is the deepest, most meaningful investments that philanthropy can make to build models that will be able to be replicated in the communities that they're trying to get their arms around, the bigger communities that they're trying to get their arms around on the mainland. And so that is one of the ways that we have shifted our frustration with the lack of investment. How do we take all the things that are assets that have allowed us to sustain our communities and to exist and sustain our organizations without the kinds of resources that national mainland nonprofits and place-based foundations have access to? What value is that to national philanthropy? And I believe that there is a tipping point that a lot of communities are sitting on, and we are on the front lines of that. We've actually mastered it because of the succession of crises that we've all had to endure without resources. There are lessons to be learned, and I think COVID was a great example of the fact that developing communities did better than developed communities in many instances around COVID, because of the level of ingenuity, because of the social contracts that we have that are such a core part of how we do philanthropy, and also because of our ancestral wisdom that we've held on to. And I think that is such a huge part of what philanthropy of the future is going to have to lean on, but has not built mastery around. We have built mastery around that. And so our hope is that by having partners like you fill this survey out, that we can take that to national philanthropy to say, hey, there is an investment that's worth your time and your money, because it can teach you lessons that you don't understand that you need to learn to make your work more effective. So that's how we're making our appeal to national philanthropy.
That's absolutely spot on and perfect. Deanna, thank you so much for sharing that. And I love how you've also directed it to like the umbrella of NGOs or nonprofits, like what St. Croix Foundation and what Mango is representing as well. And when we go back to what Andra shared about government transparency, accountability, and the challenges and so forth, I love that there's another what I call more meaningful and reliable option with this umbrella organization that basically is, I go back to Puksai, adopting, nurturing, and making sure that, in mapping out the margins in all of these place-based communities, that there's a lot of that transparency in what we have and what the value, what our worth is across all of the different NGOs, nonprofits, and certainly how can we, how we lift all boats in that particular process. Thank you.
No, that's amazing, Sarah. Yes, please. If you have any, and Anita also, if you have any like other type of lesson learned or request or message to philanthropy, please share from Guam. Sarah, you were not gonna say something, Sarah? I thought you were.
She wants to.
Okay, you have to unmute yourself again.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say that when I entered into the field of nonprofit work many decades ago, and one of the realizations that we had, because we had very few direct federal grants coming into Guam at the time, and when we started to explore that, we became cognizant that the federal government had a certain perception of the territories in terms of the management of grants. And it was very painful to hear and to embrace this thinking that people in the territories were not competent in managing grants, and that there was a lot of corruption in the territories, et cetera, et cetera. So we really worked over the years to dispel that thinking by highlighting and promoting those programs that did very well in managing their programs. And I think that's part of the way forward too, is we don't spend enough time identifying those activities, those programs, those nonprofits, those community-based activities that are really doing some exceptional work and are very, very good at managing their programs. And so we've come a long way as nonprofits here in the Pacific, and I think in territory wise, but we don't do enough good work in uplifting and promoting the work that we do, so that people do know. So it's not just this thinking that we're not smart enough, or we don't do good enough in managing our programs, because we really do. We have lots of examples of that. So I think that's one way forward, is that we really need to increase our visibility and credibility and uplift those programs that have done exceptional. So I wanted to make sure that that was mentioned, and that we also, I think the idea of unifying the territories is really a very creative and awesome way in which to present our common message and our common mission to philanthropy, and not only in the United States, but even globally, especially out here. We're in Micronesia, and I tell you, on Guam and in the CNMI, because we're U.S. territories, we're envious of the other Micronesian islands who get support from other countries and do extremely well with the support of other countries. So I understand the political issues connected to that, but I also say, let's find a way. And I know that the Micronesian Nonprofit Leaders Coalition, that's exactly what we're looking at, is how we can do that, because there are people that share our vision and want to help our people. And of course, we're going to be very conscientious and reflective about, who these donors are, because that's also another thing, is sometimes people like to give you something because they have their own hidden agenda. So we need to explore who these givers are as well. But I'm really looking forward to some unified ideas for us to do as territories. But also, I think that getting to some of the model programs that you all have shared is going to be a great thing too, for us to talk individually about how we can learn from each other. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I want to give opportunity to Emma. Do you want to add something about CNMI?
Yeah, I was just thinking about, for those philanthropists out there who have specific areas that they're passionate about, that they can be reached out to, give to an organization that does fiscal sponsorships. It can be restricted funds, and it's those funds for that program. And to do that, you have to have systems set up that can track that kind of stuff. And one of the things, thanks, Sarah, for opening the door. One of the things that Mango does is that everything we do, as we do it, is audit ready. We process everything, all the documents we've got hard copies, soft copies, so everything is accounted for. Unlike the government, like one of our, the Arts Council, which is one of the government agencies, they were blacklisted from the NEA for 10 years because they were so bad. So I think that so many of the things that we're trying to do, that the governments are trying to do because they don't know that a nonprofit could probably do it better, we need to start taking that stuff back and hoping philanthropy can help fuel that process with, restricted grants in their areas, or for them embracing the concept of capacity building to give people the training that they know they need. They may not have the education for specific things, but with guidance, they can totally do it. And that's one of the things that's happening at Mango. The staff there, most of them are not nonprofit professionals. And now they could go work at the Department of Finance here and they would be model employees because of what they do. So I think getting that across to the philanthropists, that organizations can provide a great service to all of the nonprofits and then the community as well. And they can target what they want to do. I think that's it.
Thank you so much, Emma. That's part of what Right to Democracy is trying to do with these, starting with these conversations, uniting, networking, but also visibilizar, making visible. And we will have, of course, a summit around U.S. colonialism that we will invite you all to come to do that, just that. And I wanted not to oh my God, today my English is not very good looking. I wanted to give opportunity to Andra, coming from American Samoa. What would be a way forward, in your opinion, for American Samoa to be able to develop more private philanthropy with foundations and donors?
Thank you. The first thing that comes to my action item is to build a network with the wonderful best practice success stories of all the women that I'm facing as leaders today, because just to kind of condition my statement earlier that there's no philanthropy here, we have Rotary and Rotaract and Shriners. Most of the donors are also from the churches, the Catholic Church and the various churches that are here, the Protestant, the Catholic, the Mormon Church, the Seventh-day Adventist. But with regards to, for me personally, my enemy is my time. I'm so spread thin with regards to helping the government, but I'm also independent and not agreeable to how the government is providing its policy on environmental justice and the wetlands and the coral reefs, and even down to where every day in my village I'm dealing with methamphetamine, mental stress on a lot of the teenagers. And so those are realistic issues that I'm helping this administration. But I also know that my passion of work in focusing on the grassroots area is totally not in conform with the way they're doing things. So I have a challenge where Adi knows, and she's seen herself, just by the mention of the right to democracy and associating with people here, they just kind of pull back. So, and that is my challenge. And I really want to reach out with a diaspora of Samoans. Well, there's also Samoans in Guam. I have my cousins there, the Sanchez, in Guam. So reaching out to them with the same values and principle, and being fearless to know that there is a need, and only when we provide the strength to our youth to have voices and not be scared of the consequences. So that's my challenge in leading by example, and also trying to, I don't have a 501c3. I'm trying to revive the two 501c that's been idle because not enough time, but I certainly want to call out to the philanthropists and say, I started this from seed money from my own savings, and I see the difference that it's making, especially with the woman empowerment that I've established. But we just haven't had a formal approach in funneling and asking for help. So, and I really value the fact that I'm connecting in the network and uh, looking forward to asking for help.
Thank you so much, Andra. And I think this is a very good point. If there are reactions from others to what others have said, to do it now, to start closing the conversations. We haven't had any questions from the public that is attending right now, but if some questions comes after, or if somebody is seeing this recorded, please feel free to write an email to ask any questions you have. But if you guys have any other reactions to what has been said here today, please do it now. Yes, Anita.
Just one closing item, and this came up. The members of the diasporic community who are away from the homeland, their spirits, their hearts are still connected. I say spiritually, virtually, and there's, you know, Chamorro, we call it mahalang. They're mahalang for the homeland. They're mahalang for you know, being here. It's so expensive. It's become cost prohibitive to travel. There are a lot of things that have caused families to move away from the islands because of something better, you know, more affordable options, better, you know, employment opportunities and so forth. And much of this, for a variety of reasons, disasters after disasters. Oh, well, you know, the military buildup is causing the, you know, the rise in the cost of living, especially with housing and rent and so forth. And are there enough federal dollars or DOD dollars to make up for that? Probably not. But the diaspora across the U.S. mainland, they really, really care about what's happening back home. And so the worth is already, I mean, it doesn't even have to be articulated. They already know that. But it's how do we connect in a systematic way so that you've got this sustainable level of giving to help out across all of these different causes, from the mapping that Deanna spoke about, and certainly whatever else has been represented from their respective homelands. Thank you.
Thank you. Other reactions to what has been said today? It doesn't have to be to, yes, Emma.
So what Andra almost made me cry because of her reference to the youth and the reference to time being her enemy or the challenge. And I hope that we can all together, I mean, I feel like there's something here. There's something special here. And I don't know where it's going or what it means, but I feel that. And so I'm thinking like, well, Andra, call Mango. We'll help you get your 501c3. And then I'm saying, wait, but our mission is the CNMI. But wait, what if we could help more people? I mean, you kind of set off this thing that I have to breathe but I just wanted to, one, ask if it would be possible to share things, like Anita, like the study that Holly did, or the percentages that you were reading off, because I love data. And if we could share that, that would be great. And I just want to applaud all of you. You inspire me. And I'm like, please email me and let's be partners, because I hear, Deanna, I love your words. I'm not a words person, I'm a numbers person. And you've got like this beautiful way of putting ideas together. It's just, we all have different stuff. And that I think like the traditional navigators have taught me that you need a very diverse crew for success. If it was all me, wouldn't be a good crew. If it was all Sarah, wouldn't be a good crew. But the people that are on the screen right now for a successful voyage, I think we can do it. And the concept of every time I look at a drop down now and one of you aren't on it, Saipan, CNMI 50-50. But whenever I look and you guys aren't on it, I'm going to email those people and say, dudes, all of the territories need to be there, and I think that I thank you. This has been such an amazing seed. Let's put it that way.
Thank you so much, Emma. I think nobody could have closed the conversation better in that way. I've heard it is one of our main objectives of these panels that we're doing monthly. This one for us is very important, precisely because we want to build that common ground between territories, places that are sharing a very similar conditions in very dissimilar ways, but still similar. And I think that I have fallen in love with the idea of crew. The person that was to blame to that is because Anita, the way she describes the whole process of the Guam University of integrating the values, traditional values of the rowers, of the seamen, sea persons, that it's just amazing to think about this analogy of how all of the territories, by respecting differences, but in a way that making it potentiating the different capacities that we have in order to push forward. It's amazing analogy. And from what I've heard, commonalities of everybody that has spoken today, it's how can we connect to confront different perceptions that philanthropy has of the territories. There's perceptions about us as people, misconceptions, misgeneralizations, prejudices, and what the other thing that I've heard from everybody is how do we point out how useful this experience that we've had as peoples and as communities that have come together to move forward, and how this translates in the NGO philanthropic sector can serve as an example. Because now that everybody's going through and suffering climate change and all these disasters, we see that the answer is always how can community come together to solve, right? But we have been doing that to survive since day one, since our first colonizers. And in that sense, I hear like, how are we better seen as territories, who we are, how much we have to give, how much value there is in our experience. And I've heard that from all of you. And so hoping that we are able to keep connecting in many different ways. I've already said, you are all invited to the summit on U.S. colonialism. You'll get another invitation, and hoping that this is a seed to keep these conversations going, and to be able to build unifying ideas to model and to propose. So thank you so much. If there are any other thoughts, I think we can leave it here today. But it has been such an honor to be with you all tonight. And let's keep the conversation going, and at least in Right to Democracy, as long as we can, that's exactly what we want to do, and collaborate with all of you to build philanthropy moving forward in the territories of the Caribbean and of the Pacific. Thank you so much.